are you trying to get him in trouble?
Pop, see, you start stuff. It don't work, that's all I can tell you. Battery low.
Say, talk to, Andy, yeah,
Not yet.
I never knew his email you came in.
I saw that.
So, Dr. Hill, you're telling me you can record the meeting out here via Zoom?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll just tell Ms. Patsy that's what we did.
Okay.
But then you'll have to go up there and pull it up.
Is that the only one?
What's the battery today?
I might have one in my truck that I used to use for.
Illegal purposes.
Here, what kind is it? I got some good ones.
Triple A.
Got two?
No, I'm in my truck.
Let me go to the office.
What's in there?
Chocolate milk, white milk.
Yes, if we got, okay, the quarantine up in here, we have something. Ooh, it's raining.
So that again. You can see what? Oh. What did I know? Oh, last screen. Yeah. Too long.
Move now. Good problem. My wallet's gone. Johnny, been there? Where you at? We've been looking.
Well,
Who's this up?
Why?
I'm still looking.
You're so close to this 4 months. Are you?
Too late.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me? This is board member James N. Swinney. Can anybody hear me out there?
Hey, Ms. Sweeney, you been heard.
Oh, yeah, okay. You at the board meeting or you doing Zoom?
I'm doing Zoom.
Oh, okay. All right, good, good. How you doing, man?
Not bad. The question gonna be how you coming along.
Well, I'm getting that, brother. Just have to take a day at a time and push on through.
That's how you do it. Take it one day at a time.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
If you need me, I'm here.
Huh?
I said, if you ever need me, I'm here.
Yeah, appreciate that. Appreciate that, Doc. Put myself on mute until they start up.
$5:30. Time I need a motion to turn open session.
So move.
Yes. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say motion, let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. All right, motion carried. All right, at this time, we're gonna stand for a motion, for a moment of silence, in memory of 9/11 Patriot Day remembrance, and also for the family of Miss Gladys Sweeney. When we get through that, we're gonna do the pledge of allegiance also. All right, at this time, we'll do the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States,
States of America.
which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time, down to our approval of our minutes, I need approval of the minutes of the 8th, August 10th, 2020 meeting. Motion is second, any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor say motion, let know by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carried. All right, we're down to our next item on the agenda. We're down to our financial report, Mr. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you. All we have on the agenda this evening is August month review. I'll remind you, if you're taking a look at that, you got that before the meeting. This is the continuing resolution. The review budget updates have been made through the month of August. Legislative return session tomorrow. And we'll begin, I think, after the full debate of what's the consent finance. But this represents the continued resolution through August. That's the answer to any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me? Your spread, just kind of, what was our total amount that we received from the CARES Act funds?
Well, there are multiple pots under the CARES Act, but the CARES ESSER money, $2.3 million.
Okay, thank you, sir.
We'll go down to our next item on the agenda, down to our personnel report. Dr. Andrews.
Chairman, members of the board, at this time, I would like to recommend the following exhibits for approval. Exhibits A through C.
Second. I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor of said motion, let them know by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carried. All right. You gonna give us a personnel update also? Okay.
Okay. Just to give you a brief update on our staff and students related to COVID-19. Moving forward, the data reflected in this presentation also collected rather between the dates of August 4th and September 11th. In other words, the first 14 days of school. See the data that we have in comparison to the data would differ. They won't coincide with the 28 to 30 day cycle. And again, ours is 14 days for them. Okay. Also, we move forward to the presentation due to our compliance with FERPA. Obviously, we won't name any names or provide information that we need to that information first. So we'll talk about strictly numbers. Okay. Looking at this slide, approximately 1,100 employees. We basically had 3 positive cases in regards to our staff. One each week. First, about 3-week school period so far. So it's a total of 3. As we look at our students, positive cases, we have a total of 5, about 6,836 5 cases. Okay. Obviously, though the total number of our staff, student positive cases, minimal, the real impact is with the isolations and quarantine. That's the impact. And say that obviously because we know of those contacts, household cases, close contact cases, and when those take place, then obviously every number, every person, every employee, staff member that we see up there has to go into isolation quarantine for between 10 and 24 days. So that's the greatest impact. Okay. So our student isolation quarantines, so those numbers, 48 the first week of school, with 3 the second week, and last week, 24 students. Only 95 students who had gone to isolation before. Okay. Think about how we notify parents. Essentially, there's 2 ways that we do that. Be it by phone call or by way of letter. When we do, before we send out notifications to parents about a positive case, we have to consider factors. One or all of the following factors that you can see: results of contact tracing, that's available number of close contacts, household versus exclude. When do we think case was hard? And safety measures practice. After that school, your safety measures will be practiced. So all those factors have to come into play before we notify the parents. Also, we look at particularly number 2, the number of close contacts. We're really talking about the size of the classroom, well, the number of students that came in close contact. If it's a big number, obviously, we'll send out letters. But if it's a small number, then we'll get home. We'll talk about employees, employee leave or employee leave entitlement. We have our first families doing the virus act that we're trying to follow. Basically, an employee will receive employee leave or entitlement if they meet 1 of 6 criteria in that act. Okay? There have to be 1 of 6 criteria. We'll follow through with making sure that they receive proper entitlement. Just a little simple version of protocols that we use when an employee goes into isolation, has to go into isolation or quarantine. As you can see, step 1, if it happens, that employee will actually we're supposed to move on to and notify if the principal or supervisor and when the school nurse. That nurse or the supervisor slash school nurse or the nurse will contact me. Then we'll go over the situation that I showed you earlier. When did it happen? Where did it happen? Trying to determine whether or not it's going to be an isolation or quarantine. And then once we make that determination, we actually send a letter out to notify the employee on whether he or she meets the criteria to actually receive a first family's leave. Okay? Every situation obviously is unique in itself. So these are 4 steps that are very, very important. Our principals do a great job. Nurses doing a great job following those steps. You all know that when an employee tests positive, they may return 10 days from the onset of the symptom, or have at least no fever for 24 hours. Then we move on to the next step. The employees at home, quarantine for 14 days, close contact 14 days, and if he or she develops symptoms, that's another 10 days on top of that. That's where the 10 to 24 day range comes from. And isolation, quarantine, obviously, the employee is in isolation. He or she actually staying away from everyone, including those in her house. Quarantine, staying home, trying their best to stay. Okay? Again, data that you just saw, that I just shared with you, for the first 3 weeks. Any questions?
How does that compare to across the state?
Yeah, same issue. Same issue.
It's about the same percentage.
Yes.
Across the state.
There are pockets where you had one student who happened to be in a large class, that then led to isolation, a bunch of people, you had those, but most people are seeing the same kind of, just a few trickle here and there.
A couple questions. Anybody who's tested positive with the virus, before they come back to school, do they have to take a test to see if they are okay before they come back out of quarantine?
If they test positive, yes.
Okay, and we've only had 5 students out of the number of students, even though you have down 6,000 and almost 7,000 students, but technically that's about 3,000 and something, I guess, 3,500. So we only have had 5 cases in the first 3 weeks. Is that correct?
Out of all of our students, 6,836 students, face-to-face and virtual.
Okay. All right. Those students that goes into isolation, if I'm tested positive and I'm around other students, those students that goes into quarantine and isolation, that was around this affected person, what's our method of knowing whether they come back positive or not? They have to take tests too?
Not necessarily. That would be great, but not necessarily, Sweeney. The key is to make sure that they don't have any symptoms.
Okay. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Well,
Anyone else? Right now, Dr. Evans, how many do we have actually on isolation, quarantine? Then you get different numbers every 3 weeks. Right now, how many is that?
right now, as far as staff, we have 5. And as far as students go, we have 11. That's right.
That's active cases. I mean, not active cases, but active people that's on quarantine.
That's correct. That's correct.
You want to?
What percentage is involved in closing down a school? What percentage involved and students at a school.
Really no set percentage was 20.
Okay, thank you.
This is Dr. Chapman. Students that are in quarantine or isolation, how are we making sure that they're able to get their learning material, assignments, and participate in the classroom?
So those students who are in quarantine or isolation, if they're able, based on their symptoms, they can go virtual.
Okay.
Those students will become virtual students until they're off of quarantine or out of isolation.
And do we have Chromebooks issued to all the students at this point?
Just our virtual students.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, Dr. Anderson.
You're welcome.
We're down to our curriculum board, Ms. Folsom.
Chairman, members of the board,
You
you were given a list of our local board approved courses for approval tonight. Need a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second. I got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor of said motion, let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
No.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right.
I'd like to highlight a few items from our August 2020 curriculum report. We are continuing with our STRDEP 5K teaching professional development, which is part of our 4K block grant. Teachers have worked with Dr. Sanders and Hall from Clemson University. They have done this virtually. We've had a session in the end of the summer. She also will be coming back virtually in October to continue the work. We have other sessions planned for the rest of the school year. I'm happy to announce that we have developed a partnership with the Governor's School for Math and for Science and Math. Cheshire County School District is the Governor's School for Science and Math, partner to bring accelerated engineering program to our high schools. We have 3 Sherrall High School students and Chesterfield High School students participating in the programs. All materials, laptops, textbooks are free to our students, including summer camps on college campuses. Mr. Chairman, I think that includes highlights.
Any questions? Hearing none, thank you, Ms. Bolton. All right, this time we're down to the superintendent report. Dr. Dillon.
Okay, we bring you 2 policies tonight for second reading approval. First is policy ADP, which is drug-free schools. If you recall, the main highlight of what we changed there was what has been in practice for a number of years here, which is that a offense is not an automatic expulsion for students, but we hold an expulsion hearing where we can decide possible interventions or expulsion. So, Mr. Chair, we recommend approval.
All right, need a motion.
So moved.
Motion second. All those in favor say motion, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed, like sign. All right, motion carries.
Okay, the next one is policy KF, which is community use of school facilities. You'll recall that the main 2 changes here is that we do require proof of liability insurance for any group now that would be using our cafeterias. That was a recommendation of the School Boards Association as well as our own attorney. And then also we beefed up a little bit about the requirement to use a kitchen in a school and made it clear. It's been our practice, but it's never been made clear that they had to have a kitchen operator if they're going to use our kitchen. So if the group wants to use the kitchen, they have to actually pay for an operator while they're here, just as they have to pay for a custodian. So we would recommend approval to those two changes on policy K.
I have a question, Doc.
Yes, sir.
I noticed that we changed from the local advisory council to the Chesterfield County School District. I would assume that if a group or somebody wanted to use this meeting, you would be the one that would sign off for the school district. Because is that correct?
Actually, it would be my designee, which would be Mr. Batson, since
I mean, well, all your designee, yeah.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And we're taking the local advisory council out of the mix now, right?
Yes, sir. And part of the reason for making that change was if kitchen staff is needed or custodians, that's really something that we ended up doing at the district level anyhow, which is really the process that has to happen.
And our local advisory councils know that this change, or will they be notified that this change is going to take place, or have they been notified? Because I do know that local advisory council in some areas still meet and approve facilities.
Yes, sir. We will notify them of the policy change. We actually always send them policy changes when they're made.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Second. All right, got a motion and a second on the floor. Yeah, that's good. Here none, I call for vote. All those in favor say motion, don't say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carried.
Okay, we'd like to give a update on our reentry. I would say before I start into any of the presentation slides, shockingly how smooth have things operated coming back in. Of course, as we kicked in the virtual school option, that's where we hit hiccups, and we anticipated that would be there because it's something we've never done before. So, but we did have a good opening. It has been, students have done very well. Teachers have done incredibly well at managing the reentry. But what I'd like to do is just sort of give you an update on where we are and some things that are upcoming, and won't take too long doing these. Try not to. I just was on the phone just before we gaveled in with the chief deputy with the State Department of Education. He was asking me where we were on our move toward 5 days per week face-to-face. He's verifying an email I sent him last week saying that we were adding the alternating AV Wednesdays to bring us up to a true 50% average instructional time. He asked me what we would be looking at moving forward, and I told him we would continue to watch those DHEC reports, and if we can ever get out of that dark blue and get into one of those lighter color blues, we can start moving toward plan to come back 5 days a week. I would have to say though that the next one that comes out that we will be considering will be September the 21st, which will determine our course of action for October the 5th at 12. I will give a disclaimer. After getting half students in, it's obvious there is no way to socially distance the full class. There's not enough square footage. So when we come back full time, we will not be social. And I shared that with him in our conversation. He said that's been the case everywhere that's back off of the height. One of the requirements of the face-to-face and virtual for us, as far as all of our reopening plan, was that we had to map test all of our students coming back in. As of Friday afternoon, we had actually map tested 95% of the students, and that included face-to-face and virtual students. So our principals have done an outstanding job of finding all those students. I know one of you, not as part of the meeting, but asked me how we were doing on finding students. And I told you very well. So not only are we finding them very well, but we're assessing them very well. So we're pleased with that number. I would also say that Betsy DeVos, the National Secretary of Education,
sent out a letter last week notifying all school districts and all state agencies that they would not be considering any waivers for testing for the upcoming year. And to use her words, teachers and administrators have always been creative. You just need to figure out how to test. So we, I guess, right now are moving forward unless something changes with the presidential election. We're moving forward with plans to test. So that's where we are on that. I did mention at the beginning, we're going to start the alternating of the AB cohorts on Wednesdays. We're trying to get the most instructional time for most kids. This was a way for us to get 40, 50% average. And so we did that. We're also still going to have selected students coming in for enrichment. So those students may even get more time than that. And also IEP students, we gave those students the option of attending 5 days a week. And that was a parent choice. But we do have a number of students taking advantage of that opportunity. Now, this is where it really gets down into the work that's going on since the last time we met. We had approximately 3,000 students, as you knew, that selected the virtual option. We were required by both the governor and the State Department of Education to offer a virtual option. That represents between 42 and 43% of our, Amy, is that going to be okay? Approximately 42 to 43% of our students
Say it with me.
hold a second. I will stop it and go and stand by. Can you touch it? Okay. So we had to make that offering. It ended up being between 42 and 43% of our total student body. So if that gives you a picture, what I like people to think about, we have a school that has 6 second grade teachers. We had to devote 3 teachers to face-to-face, and we had to devote 3 teachers to virtual, because our virtual student-teacher ratios are a little bit larger. So we've literally split our staff in our elementaries in half. Is what we've done. So we have that going on. Remember, we asked, required parents to commit to a full first semester. And the reason for that is if we have any shift, we then have to reallocate staff. So again, taking that 6 student scenario, or that 6 teacher scenario, if 6 students want to come back from virtual to face-to-face, that means we've increased the face-to-face student-teacher ratio by 2 students per classroom. We would need, for instance, 20 students to come back. We're not getting, we don't have those kind of numbers for us to devote a full section back to face-to-face. We are going to, in November, right after Election Day, we're going to open re-enroll. We're going to allow students and parents to choose virtual, face-to-face again for second semester. So there is an opportunity for a do-over if the family decides they want to change, and that'll be in November when we re-enroll.
How long is the enrollment going to be at the time?
2 full weeks. Yes, sir. It's going to start on the 10th and end on the 24th, which is Tuesday to a Tuesday week. The next challenge we had was we didn't have any Chromebooks when the summer began. And we had 2,700 families request a Chromebook. And if you remember, we had our Chromebook new ones that we ordered, got to the border, were turned away. So we were able to find 2,700 refurbished Chromebooks that we're able to use for this year. Just because they were, quote, given to us
doesn't mean they were free. We had to license them all. We had to do all of the provisioning of those. And literally, we had pallets and pallets of Chromebooks that everyone had to be touched, connected to our networks, and analyzed and set up for student use. Would remind you, we do still have the 2,600 new Chromebooks on order from a different supplier, so hopefully we'll be seeing those sometime in the future. We also had 1,600 families who received a mobile hotspot. That's a Verizon hotspot that they received. We really, I kept you updated via email that we were having problems with those. We have to put all of our filtering and all of our child internet protection safety has to be placed on those devices. So what we were having a problem with was Verizon accepting our downloads to those devices. Each one had to be taken out of the box. First, you had to put a battery in. Once you got the battery in it, you had to seal it up. You had to turn it on. It had to speak to the cell tower. After it spoke to the cell tower, you initialized the download, and it began sending the signal, and it updated the firmware. And we could only do 10 at a time at a location because the cell towers in our county could only handle that much traffic at a time, at that much data. So we were sending them to Pageland, we were sending them to Jefferson, we had them here in Chesterfield, we had them in Sherrall, and we had them in Nashville, and we were doing them 10 at a time. So you can see why we had such a hard time provisioning. The scary thing is these all run out of data December the 31st. They are useless on December the 31st. So if a family has been doing virtual, we've let them know they've been doing virtual. They've got to finish up the rest of the first semester. After Christmas for elementary and middle, they're going to have to find a Wi-Fi hotspot to go to be able to finish their work. And to be honest, it is severely cost prohibitive for us to re-up those hotspots for any amount of time. Basically, it's an I got you by Verizon on that.
So after December 31st, we will not be issuing any more hotspots to anyone that decides to go virtual.
That is correct.
Dr. Goodman, Aaron Coleman,
Yes, sir.
being that if December 31st will be the last day in terms of them having any type of service, what's the possibility of us using any, I mentioned it, asked about it earlier, do we have any CARES Act funds that could take care or might offset the cost of stuff like that?
Well, I'm going to talk some about the CARES Act money. And when I talk about it, you'll see that it's going very, very fast. And it is rather cost prohibitive for us to upgrade those devices for additional months at a time. But maybe we can talk about that when we get to the slide with the CARES Act money summary on it.
Okay, because I was speaking in terms of hearing Mr. Duke to make a comment about it as well, because that's going to be a real dilemma when a family can't afford it and December 31st hits. That's a huge concern.
Yes, sir, it is. And you know, it's one that we caution families on very carefully, and they actually had to, when they enrolled in virtual, they had to answer the question twice, 2 different times in the survey, verifying that they understood these parameters on the hotspots and on data connection, because we've been concerned about this since the legislature passed the use of these funds only through December 31st. And the reason they only passed it through December 31st is because their CARES Act money runs out December 31st.
Okay.
So, you know, that's where we are.
Sure.
Yeah, one other question.
John,
Previous slide
Yes, sir.
about 4K. Is the face-to-face on the 4K working good, working well, and are we looking to maybe go
repeat the question.
elementary level?
To answer his question about the 4K and us in the family model,
It is actually going very, very well. We only have top enrollment on those is 16, and we have 2 adults. But we've used some of the things we've learned with that family model, that our next step would probably be family model for elementary grades before we move on to middle school and high school.
Couple questions, Doc.
Yes, sir.
Look, those refurbished devices that we have, how are they working? Because I have had some concerns that have been expressed to me. How are they working overall?
Well, we knew with the refurb we would have issues, so we actually set up each site with spares that they're allowed to take back in that device and reissue a replacement device. So, we did plan for that. So, naturally, they are 4-year-old machines, so we knew there would be issues. So we built in a system to address that. So I would say that if a person's having a problem, they need to contact their school.
Right, that's what I've been advised.
Okay.
Dr. Goodwin, I have a question back, following up with Mr. Coleman's comment. After the grant runs out for the free internet or broadband or whatever, if a family did elect to go virtual and found out that later that it was too much of a financial hardship, are we going to be able to allow that child back into the normal school setting?
Well, it comes back down to that earlier discussion about staff allocation. If we have a seat available, we certainly would try to accommodate them. The problem is we've maxed out our face-to-face seats that are available at this point. I don't know what will look like second semester, but we certainly would not want to run a class up to, say, 27, 28 in an elementary school face-to-face just because somebody didn't make an informed decision when required them to check off twice what the decision they were making was.
Right. And I certainly understand, and I concur. My problem again is I don't want to deny that child access to an education just because the parent made a unwise decision or was not in a situation financially that they should have went that route. I realize definitely with the overcrowded classroom, it can definitely get to be a problem. It's just, I'd like to have some kind of backup plan, and I'm sure you're working on it. It says, well, if this family had opted to virtual and found out that it is a financial hardship, how do we still ensure that that child gets a proper education?
Well, we have had some discussions with local internet providers about possible options that they might have to provide internet, but okay. I certainly cannot speak for them at this point.
Okay. Well, and actually I'm thinking maybe, and again, this is just being innovative thinking, I guess. Maybe that family can bring them to a local resource like a library or wire somewhere where they would have internet access and get charged a different fee that family could afford.
Well, and that is true, and Stanford currently has a number of hotspots, free hotspots available in the county, and they have shared with me they're going to increase that number of community hotspots available.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. And again, that may be if it gets to that, some increased bus service to get them to those hot spots. But we'll talk about that when the situation arises, if it does. But thank you for the follow-up.
Okay. Just giving you an update on some academic calendar issues. The high school virtual classes can't begin until this Wednesday. The reason they don't is the state virtual program doesn't begin until Wednesday. That's who all of those courses are through. And you'll notice that there's December 8th. So this talk about hotspots and all for high school students really not an issue because they do finish the semester. They really compress their semester. They always start late and end before Christmas as the first. And just reminding you about staff, we, virtual staff still come to school unless they have hardship. And if they did, they had to agree to a reduced FTE. In other words, a reduced full-time equivalency, so a reduced pay to be able to work virtually from home. We do have a few of those, and they understood why we had to do it that way. So, and then we talked about the preference being given to face-to-face instruction because of classroom space. The other challenge that I don't think we were prepared to be quite as great is the food service challenge. Not only do we make a meal for the kid who's there at school today, but we make a meal for that student to take home today. And at the same time, we're preparing meals here in this room for all the virtual students that will be living in sites, community sites around the district. We're averaging about 10 meals per week for virtual students. So it is a very significant undertaking. We're actually having at least a mobile cooler put out back at PLC because we don't have enough cooler and freezer space where this at any of our sites. Not only that, but we've also requested National Guard assistance for 3 days a week that would work here helping us prepare and distribute. So, and they begin tomorrow, that's Wednesday. National Guard begins here on Wednesday. Also a positive is that the State Department of Education did buy a large amount of PPE and disinfectant for us. It's still coming in. There is no such thing as large gloves right now. And so we're waiting on large gloves, but we were notified last week that they're going to make another order on our behalf, and they're going to pay for that order again. So that is helping us defer some of the money that we're having to spend on disinfectant and PPE, which is very helpful, especially when you look at the next slide. Mr. Willard mentioned earlier, reminding you, $2.3 million in ESSER funds. I would let you know that obligated to this point, we've already obligated $1.2 million for technology and support. Also obligated $220,000 for educational support license. That's what makes virtual school go. We're spending money to provide the courseware. We spent $50,000 on disinfectant and cleaning wipes, and we've spent $11,000 out of our funds for PPE, which means that unobligated to this point, it looks like we have a lot there at $819,000, but that does not count the obligation that we will have to make to undergird our food service program, which is losing money, hemorrhaging money because of the way we're having to compete. So we will be very, very careful in obligating the remainder of the funds.
That money for disinfectant, that for the entire semester,
No, sir. It is amazing what it costs per week to operate just on disinfectant. When you consider schools, playgrounds, locker rooms, it is busing. It is eating us alive.
I think the report also went out that gas is not in our name.
Oh, yes, that is the most important thing to point out. This is reimbursable funds. So we have to spend district funds and then apply for reimbursement every quarter to get our money back. Check is always in the mail. Then athletics, we'll give you an update is that we are following the South Carolina High School League requirement. If you read their guidance document, and if you read all of the stuff that they turned over to the Commerce Department, you know that it's very, very significant what they're requiring us to do. Attendance is limited based on a formula site. I did let you know that we were going to the GoFan app, advance purchases of tickets, and then also we can sell paper tickets in advance. We will not be carrying 20 boxes. You know how many people are coming for the game or the event. Only South Carolina High School League passes will be exempted this year, but even those will be severely limited on the number of those. So we will contact the visiting team and say, you can have this many people come in on pass, and we'll have the same number of people coming in on pass, because we have to be able to know what the count is that's going to be at the game. So they can't get a whole bunch of free passes, show up at the gate, bring 40 people. It's going to be more like 10 passes, which is a total of 20 people, is all that they can bring to an event. So we have to do that part. We do press release that's been provided to the local press about all of these changes. We have actually used the GoFan app at some events already, and it's done very, very well. Great thing about it, you don't take up any money. You don't have to make a deposit. You don't have to count money. You don't have those variables with cash floating around. And we did choose not to charge the convenience fee to our patrons. We are absorbing the convenience fee as a gift, so that they're not losing that. No, I buy a $6 ticket and I find that that's going to be $7. We chose to do it the other way, where if I buy a $6 ticket, they just see $6. That's what they see. We'll get a real big test on this over the next few days, with the last of our football scrimmages coming up, and volleyball is kicked off. So we'll be getting a good taste of how well this works. But so far it's been good. If you've been reading the school board clippings, you see that what we're doing is exactly what the other districts in the state are doing. You know, it's all been orchestrated by the high school league. So you can tell that the methods are all the same being used. So that ends my presentation, and certainly we'll take any more questions or discussion. Any questions?
I have a comment, Doc, and I know we're doing all we can as we adjust to this new norm. It seems to be a new norm for at least a short period of time. Look, with this situation that's coming up on December the 31st, when this hot spot will only be active until December the 31st, and I know we're going to do this, but I just want to emphasize it. We're going to have to do a great job in notifying those parents that have these devices that they no longer want to be able to plug in to the internet if they don't have access to it. That's number one, and I would assume that we're going to have a lot of computers or devices turned back in. What's the plan for the 2,600 new Chromebooks that's on order?
Those will be used within the schools as we're making our way to a one-on-one environment. So those will be used within the school, you know, to issue for additional school use. You know, our goal is to be a one-to-one district. So hopefully that 2,600 plus whatever we may be able to purchase with additional funds from the state will get us closer to there, and we'll bring you a plan to how to get to 7,000.
Okay, second comment. Give me your overall opinion on how our virtual school is going. And I know it's just been running for a week, but how was it the first week?
Well, first 4 days were obviously growing opportunities. We had, you know, we had families who had not read the information on how to log in and needed help with that. We had families who had login issues that were there, you know, were issues on our end. We had, you know, just those kinds of challenges. I would say this: I'm very heartened that our teachers are our front line. They have done a great job of communicating with families and opening that communication line. You know, it's going to be a growth process. We implemented in about 6 weeks what you're really supposed to take a full year to implement.
And because of that, it's going to be a challenge all year.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Dr. Goodwin, this is Darren Coleman again. I don't mean to be a bother. When I think about December the 31st, and although we have communicated with families, and some may have seen it and may not, but there was some kind of things out on Facebook about how some families felt like they were denied some of the services. But my concern is, when we talk about ending these hotspots on December the 31st, right now as we speak through Verizon, what is our currently monthly bill?
What's currently what now? Oh, we did not pay for the Verizon at all. I can tell you in loose numbers, if we were to shoulder this burden for the remainder of the year, it would be around $300,000 for the remainder of the year.
What was that now?
It would, if we were to shoulder this as a district, it would be in the neighborhood or maybe north of $300,000 to extend these for the remainder of the school year. So it's a very, very significant.
Okay. And I know we're doing what we can in the current setting, but I think we all know that that's going to be a major problem come December 31st. And if we're still in this mode of virtual, a lot of students being that we cannot exceed capacity, like I've heard some say that is going to be a problem.
Yes, and by the way, it is, and it's a problem that the legislature put us in, and they put us in the situation knowing what they were doing. And what is really interesting is we at this point are not even sure that if we chose to spend $300,000 out of our ESSER fund, that we would be even allowed to spend that, because that's not an equitable distribution, that's a target audience.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some real questions as to whether that money can even be spent on, extending use of hotspots.
Yeah. I know we know what we can do, but I would definitely like for us to start, I'm sure you probably are, but at least try to get ahead of what we could consider when that comes.
Yeah. Well, myself, along with 79 other superintendents, have been trying to wrap our brain around this one, because this one got done to us, I'm afraid.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm.
Anyone else? Okay. I've been reminded that I skipped C, which was SIPA compliance. I mentioned earlier the Internet Protection Act, and that was what the problem was with the hotspots. We were required to annually give you a copy of the SIPA requirements, and so that's in your folder tonight for your review. It's also posted on our internet website.
I got one other question about those hotspots. Are they designated for that device and only that device, or are they open to be used by anyone?
They're open to be used by anyone. Anyone else? Your comments? Yes, sir. All right, we're moving on down to the chairman's comments. I'll start off with our first item. We've got, first thing we got is our November election, which is coming up. District 4, Chad Big is going to vote. District 5, Stanley and Jamie Wayne are running for District 5. District 6, Sarah Campbell and James Sweeney are running. District 7 is Robert Steele unopposed, and District 8 is Eric Dixon unopposed. Moving on down to the next item we got on the agenda, Second Life School Board Insurance Trust is having a virtual business seminar on October 15th. The deadline to sign up is September 30th. Please let Ms. Patsy know if you plan on attending that.
Our next item is South Carolina School Board Association delegate for December 4th, delegation assembly. Deadline on that is September 21st to sign up. Our next meeting, which will be our September 28th board workshop, we have decided we're gonna leave that here at PLC. That'll be at 5
Mr.
o'clock.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, let me
Yes,
just back up just a minute. For the South Carolina School Board Association delegate for the December meeting, they're only recommending this time that we just have one delegate to go to that meeting, and it's going to be a Hyper Day meeting in Columbia. So we really need to see if we got a volunteer for this meeting tonight, because we won't meet again until the 28th for that board workshop. From my understanding is that, you know, we've been signing up, taking as many as 3 delegates to go, but due to the virus, they only just want 1 delegate, and that delegate will vote for, will have the, you know, have the voting power of the 3 delegates or carry 3 votes. But it's actually recommended that we do that, and this person attend the meeting December 4th, and it's going to be held in Columbia.
We need to get somebody nominated tonight with the date.
Yeah, we need a nomination or a volunteer one.
I go. We got Mr. Deuce said he would go.
I so moved that he be our delegate for the South Carolina School Board Delegate Assembly.
Second.
That's second. All those in favor, say motion, say aye. Those opposed? None. Thank you, Dr. Smith Swing, for correcting me on that. I'm glad we got that taken care of. Thank you, Mr. Deuce, for taking care of that for us. I think we got 3 votes on that. Okay. All right. Starting back up, as I said earlier, the September 28th board workshop, we're gonna have it here at PLC, here at PLC, 5 o'clock. And our next regular meeting will be October 12th at that same location, Mount Lebanon Learning Center. Our executive session will start at 5, and our meeting will start at 5:30. This time, I give people time opportunity to speak if they need to. We're down to our agenda. We're at the close, and any other business need to be. Hearing none, I call for a vote to adjourn. Motion. A motion and a second. All those in favor say motion, I'm saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much for your attention.
Y'all have a good
Good
evening.
evening, sir.
All right, good evening.